Okay, welcome students. Let us continue our earlier discussion that is on public enterprises. And now you are aware that I am Professor Naval Kishore from School of Management Studies, IGNOU, New Delhi. So you have already understood about the basic objectives, features, various schemes of the public enterprises. Let us now come to the contribution of public enterprises. See, public enterprises have a great deal for the country to emerge as an industrial nation. You all know that the country is committed for moving toward the industrialized, well-developed country. When you want to be an industrialized nation, obviously you need to set up the industry in every part of your country so that the whole country may able to emerge as an industrial nation. Next, they have helped the process of industrialization and development of backward areas. You all are aware that, let's say the northeast area, let's say the tribal area, let's say the rural areas, which are considered as the backward areas. So you set up your industry in those areas. For example, rail coach industry, you set up in the backward area. Now when you have set up that rail coach industry in the backward area, now what happens? The whole range of the development takes place, the employment increases, local people are employed, ancillary industry may be set up across the just nearby that particular coach factory. As a result, maybe there is a probability that the whole area may develop faster. Next is, they have also assisted the development of backward communities, particularly scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, by providing employment opportunities. As you all must be knowing that in the public sector enterprises, they follow that scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, their just employment and all that as per Government of India's rule, they provide facilities and they encourage those that scheduled tribes and scheduled caste or backward communities so that they get employment in the public sector enterprises. Next is, expansion of public enterprises have led to the reduction of income disparities. How can it happen? If you set up an industry, you employ the local people. Once you employ the local people, you provide income to the local people. Once the local people get income, they also buy something, they also purchase something. The demand of that particular commodity may also go up. As a result, what happens? There is a cycle, and in that way, the disparities of the income may be reduced. As compared to private enterprises, the salary differential between the lowest and the highest paid employees is much less in public enterprise. If you see the public enterprise, then the salary difference, that is the highest paid and lowest paid, that is not there as much is in the private sector, because in the private sector somebody may be paid highest, somebody may be paid lowest. But in the public sector there is a certain range, there is certain procedures, well-defined procedures, and the public sector enterprises, they follow that well-defined procedures for salary. The constitutional objective of avoidance of concentration of economic power in few hands has been greatly achieved by the public enterprise. We have the constitutional objectives, and that constitutional objectives prescribes that there should not be concentration of economic power in few hands. Because if the private enterprises, they run the business, obviously the concentration of the power will rest in few hands only. But if there is a public sector enterprises, because they focus on the public welfare and they are not going to monopolize the whole activities. Therefore, the concentration of the economic power may be avoided through setting up the public enterprises. In the absence of these enterprises, economic power would have gone into the hands of a few large and established business houses, obviously. If there is no public enterprises, in that case, the whole economic power may rest in the hand of few business houses. Therefore, once you establish the public enterprises, obviously that concentration would be reduced. Next is the dealings of public enterprises with their suppliers, dealers, customers, employees, and public at large have a higher level of morality than in the counterpart private enterprise. Obviously, when the public enterprises, they deal with suppliers, when they deal with dealers, when they deal with customers, when they deal with the employees, or when they deal with the stakeholders, there are well prescribed procedure and convention which they follow while dealing with these stakeholders. Therefore, the moral value of these dealings may be higher side because they need to follow the standard procedures. As a result of following the standard procedures, the moral value of these dealings may be much higher. Now, after the contribution of the public enterprises, let us learn the problems of the public enterprise. Obviously, the business organizations also suffer with public or with some of the problems, some of the issues. Now, let us analyze those problems. The first is, it is not fully commercial. Obviously, the motto is here, social welfare, public interest. So, it is not completely only commercial organizations. Next is, the board of directors of public enterprises are not fully professionals because the board of directors, they represent various sections of the stakeholders. And the various sections of the stakeholders, they may not be professional to run the business organization. And their interest may also clash. So, as a result of lack of professionalism, the decision being taken by that board may not be that much commercially viable as such. Next is, there is too much job security. Because in the public enterprises, they follow the government rules and regulations related to recruitment, selection, promotion, etc., etc. As a result, the employees think that their job is secured. They are not going to be retrenched from their job. As a result, they may not be able to as productive as their counterparts, or gradually they may not be that much committed for their organization. As a result of job security, productivity, innovation, etc., etc., may also suffer in the public enterprises. The system of reward and punishment in public enterprises more often resembles that in the government. See, obviously you must be knowing that in the business enterprises, the reward and punishment play a very important role. That means if somebody works very hard, you motivate them, you encourage them, you provide them bonus. If somebody is not working, you may retrench them, you may punish them. But in the public enterprises, they follow all these policies of the government. Therefore, they may not be able to reward the hard worker and punish the less worker. Many important and large public enterprises are in areas where technology is difficult and new. Sometimes what happens, the public enterprises, large public enterprises are set up in those areas where the technology may be new or it may be difficult also. And that may create that because if you are not able to achieve the high productivity, obviously you may suffer there. Next is the workers' union are strong and well organized. In most of the public sector units, what happens, the unions are very strong. And if the unions are very strong, it becomes very difficult for you to punish them. And that may lead to inefficiency in the organization. On the pretext of the unionism, the productivity of that organization may suffer a lot. Next is, most public enterprises show poor performance. As in the initial phases, I said you that so many of the public enterprises are running at loss and they suffer because they are not able to enhance the productivity of their organization. Next is, public enterprises are very large in size as compared to private enterprises. Obviously, as the names suggest, Air India or big public sector enterprises, they are in a very large size. Therefore, they are much complex than the private enterprises. There may be other constraints also which may be due to the public sector enterprises being subject to government type audit by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. The auditing process is carried out by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Therefore, they also may just have the problems related to audit. So you have understood about the contribution of the public enterprises as well as problems associated with the public enterprises. Now let us come to the different form of the public enterprises. The first form of public enterprises is departmental organization. In the departmental organization, the basic purpose of an enterprise is to procure revenue for the government. Here the focus is, this organization is exclusively set up for procuring revenue for the government. Next is, where the government desires to have firm control over services sector, keeping in view of public interest. In some of the area, the government may be desirous to have complete control over particular services. There also departmental form of organization will be very much suitable. Where maintenance of secrecy is regarded as a matter of strategic importance. Some of the area, the security, that is secrecy is very important. For example, the defense, where the secrecy is very important. Obviously, in that area, there should be complete control by the government, complete management by the government. Where projects are in earlier stage of initial planning and require constant efforts and continuous funds. In some of the area, the project may be in the initial stages, where the control would be very much required by the government. In that cases also, departmental organization would be very much suitable. Now, from this it must be clear to you that business activities of undertakings are conducted under the overall control of one of the department of the government. And public enterprise is organized, financed and controlled in much the same way as any other government department, and that is departmental form of organization. And this form of organization you have already seen from the earlier, that it is important from the public interest and national interest. Therefore, it is suitable for the most of the undertakings which are not run for the commercial purpose. Now, let us see the features of the departmental form of organization. Obviously, you all must be knowing that overall control rests with the minister. That means the particular department. That means, suppose if this is, let's say, some food processing unit is there under public sector enterprises and it falls under the Ministry of Agriculture. So when it falls under the Ministry of Agriculture, then responsibility lies in the Ministry of Agriculture, and the minister delegates authority downwards to the various levels of the organization. That means there is a line type of authority relationship, and in order to manage day-to-day operations, government may appoint board. For example, there is a railway board, the postal services board, the telecommunication board, etc., etc. But the overall responsibility rests with the minister, and the minister is answerable to the legislature. Minister is answerable to the legislature. The questions may be asked in the parliament or the state legislature about the functioning, about the performance, about the laws making, etc., etc. of the public enterprises. Employees are the civil servants. In the public enterprises, the employees are from civil servants. As you all must be knowing about, UPSC conducts examination and they go for the recruitment and selection process of the gazetted personnel for the public sector enterprises like railways, like postal services, etc., etc. And the terms and conditions of the service of the employees are the same as government employees. Next is finance through budget appropriation. Public enterprises are financed through the government treasury, and that is done through the annual budget appropriations. The revenues of the public enterprises are also just put into the treasuries. That means it is paid or it is deposited in the treasuries. For example, railways and postal budgets form part of the government budget. So that means treasury is also important here. You have the annual budget being passed by the government of India, and you just use that budget, and if there is any revenue, you put those revenue into the treasury. Next is accounting and auditing system. Obviously, you must be knowing that the departmental organization is subject to budget, accounting and audit control, and they are treated on par with other government organizations. Next is sovereign immunity. The public enterprises enjoy the sovereign immunity of the state, and it cannot be sued without the consent of the government. Next is about merits of the public enterprise. First is maximum degree of government control. In the departmental form of organization, there has been the maximum degree of government control, and government can meet its social obligations very effectively through the setting up of public sector enterprises. Next is limited scope to misuse public funds, because the accountability of the enterprise is toward the parliament. That means public sector enterprises are accountable towards the parliament. Therefore, in the departmental organization, it is treated on par with other government departments for the purpose of budgeting, accounting and auditing. Therefore, the danger of misuse of the public funds is reduced. Next, governmental control over economic activities. As you all are aware that government has absolute control over the economic activities of the departmental organization. Therefore, the government can freely use departmental undertakings as instruments of its social and economic policy. That means, suppose if government want to serve particular area, the government want to have the postal department in the particular area, so that the facilities of the postal facility may be provided in some area, government can set up it. Next is multiplies economic progress. The surplus of the departmental organization increases the revenue of the government, and that revenue may be utilized for the economic progress of the nation and the welfare of the masses. Because if you earn some surplus, so that surplus may be just again invested for the another economic welfare of the masses, again economic welfare of the people. Next is responsible to parliament. As I said you that the departmental organization is responsible to parliament for the day-to-day operations. Therefore, they cannot claim some privileges from parliamentary scrutiny. That means if they got some privileges, that will be scrutinized by the parliament also. The members of the parliament may ask questions regarding the appointment, dismissal, promotion of particular employee, or even some purchase transaction or other day-to-day operations. Therefore, they are very much scared that they would be accountable toward the parliament. Therefore, they may misuse the powers, lest they may do wrong things, less because they are accountable for that to the parliament or state legislature. Next is limitations. Bureaucracy and red tapeism. Obviously, because the employees come from the civil servants, therefore they follow the same government bureaucratic system, and much emphasis is being provided to the rules, regulations and precedents for every decision. As a result, the initiative of the employee, the flexibility of the employee is to a large extent reduced in the decision making, and there may be delay in the decision making. As a result, you may lose some of the business opportunity. Next is suffers from political instability. Obviously, because whenever some party would be in the power, that party may encourage some of the business activities or discourage some of the business activities. So it depends on the balance of power between the ruling party and opposition. In that way, sometimes if opposition is there, then they may be victimized, their growth may be curtailed, and there may be due to the political instability, the business of the departmental form of organization may suffer. Next is excessive parliamentary control. Obviously, for the day-to-day operations, for appointment, for selection, for budget, etc., whole financial things, they are answerable toward the parliament. Therefore, there may be less scope for the initiative and a skill from the employees of the departmental organization. Because their working are scrutinized, questions in the parliament and outside, as a result, there may be delay in making vital decisions, and if you delay in making vital decisions, obviously you may lose the business opportunities. Next is lack of professional expertise. Obviously, the civil servants, they are trained for different purposes. They might not be having that much business acumen or business vision because their training is for the different purposes. And there is a rigidity in the formalities, procedures, etc. As a result, that may cause delay. And once you delay the decisions in the business, some of the time the business opportunity you may lose there. So this may hampers the understanding, commitment and responsibility, etc. Next is absence of competition and profit motives. Obviously, the commercial principles are not strictly followed in the departmental form of organization, which are very much necessary for the success of any of the commercial entity. And due to lack of competition, there may be less incentive to improve operational efficiency as such. Next is financial constraints. Obviously, the finance is through annual budget appropriations, which is made by the legislature, and revenues are paid into the treasury. Therefore, they are not allowed to raise finances on their own and they completely depend on the government. Therefore, the departmental organization may suffer due to shortage of funds and they may not be able to just put that funds into the productive activities immediately because there is a lack of flexibility in the financial matters because they are subject to budget, accounting and audit controls. In the business area, you must be aware that sometimes you need immediate investment, sometimes you need immediate finance. But here, the whole range of procedures, rules and regulations are being followed. Therefore, you may not be as flexible as may be required. So today, you have understood about this departmental form of organization, their features, their merits, their limitations and their suitability. Thank you very much.